So I've just released the split pin and got to take this nut off and also remove this screw here and here, and then remove the hub from the car. As you can see, I've already replaced the brakes in this hub, the drum brakes, and also the cylinder and the adjuster, and some of the springs have also been replaced. But we need to take this section off, which is on a spline, so we're going to remove this by either levering it or knocking it, or actually you might try a puller on it, actual pulley unit for it, because we want to get this back plate off so that we can clean this up properly, and also get to the axle so that we can clean up the end of the axle, so that when we come to put the spring back on, it will all be clean and painted. So this side will be done. When we remove the boot, we'll be able to do the central part of the axle, clean up that and paint it, and then when we go around to the other side, we'll be able to continue on with the rest of the axle and the back plate on the other side, so at least the whole thing will be clean. We're also, as we do this, we're going to be doing the brake lines on the whole car, so this is a perfect opportunity to do those. So having removed all the brake shoes and springs, I've now fitted this puller on here, and that will literally pull it off the spline so we can get to the back plate. Then we'll be able to disconnect the brake lines and take the adjuster off here as well, and we'll be able to give it a good clean up. So I've removed 3 of the nut and bolts that go through here. As you can see, you need a spanner on the back and a ratchet with a bit of a bar on it as well, because they are very tight and very rusted. But once we've removed all these 4 bolts, we should be able to release the slave cylinder from the wheel, drain the brake fluid off here, and remove the plate. Having removed the rear plate, now that we can clean it up, we've probably got to change the seal inside here. This is probably 40 years old, as old as the car, I expect. We've also taped up all the bearing and the spline to stop any damage going to happen to it when we rub this down a little bit with a wire brush. Now that we can get to it and see it nice and clearly, we'll be able to do a much better job on it. So we're going to clean it up with a wire brush and then give that a quick coat of paint, and then, like I say, replace the seal on the centre of this back plate, clean it all up, and then paint that and reassemble all back together again. Everything that I've seen so far seems to be in pretty much good condition. The bearing looks fine, there's no movement in the bearing. The spline is as good as the day it was put on. Amazing really that the car is 40 years old. The actual drum itself looks pretty good. The outside is corroded, the inside is absolutely fine. There doesn't even appear to be a lip on the inside, which is unusual. Maybe it's been skimmed or something before. So once that goes back together again with the new brake lines, then we'll be able to move on. So I'm just removing the seal now, and it looks like it's tapped in from the back, tapped in from the front, so it needs to be whacked out from the back, and I'm using a socket and a chisel to get it out without damaging the sort of. So I've taken the adjuster off now as well, and the inner seal, inner oil seal has been taken out. So now it's really just about cleaning this up, getting some of the rust off, getting a coat of paint on it, ready for the new oil seal to go back in, and clean up of the other components and a reassemble. But we'll show that as well. So after an hour or so of wire brushing with the drill and angle grinder and what have you, it looks a bit like this at the moment. I think it could afford to be. The outside is a bit worse, the bit that goes onto the axle is a bit worse for wear, but It looks perfectly clean enough, and a bit more cleaning I think, and then we'll be ready to put some paint onto it, and then when we need to do anything on the brakes they'll all be clean and won't be getting covered in mess. So I've just put the hub on temporary so I can paint it, just somewhere to hang it really, and I've also painted this part of the axle so that we can put the suspension on later on, and then it will all be painted around the suspension area. Then later on further we can clean up the rest of the axle, maybe on the other side, and also the differential when we have to probably take that apart to find out why it's whining a little bit. Probably the thrust washers have gone in that, so we can repair that as well. We also gave this a quick coat of paint. So this is the back of the drum. The brakes go on here, and the cylinder, master cylinder and adjuster. So that's all cleaned up and painted, so when that's finished drying we'll be able to put that back on. This is the handbrake metalwork, and also the bracket that holds the brake lines. That's all been cleaned up and painted. In addition, we also cleaned up the bolts of the axle because they looked in good condition, and we're just replacing the nuts just to make it look a bit better. So now that the base plate's all been painted up, we need to put the new rubber seal in and bolt it back on again. Before we put the back plate on, what we do is we've covered this area in a seal, gasket seal, and also we've done the gasket seal on here, and we've fitted the adjuster and the slave cylinder, because that makes it easier to do it now than it does afterwards when it's on. So that's now bolted on in place, and all we need to do is now fit the brake shoes back to this, along with all the springs and the boot that goes on the handbrake hole here, and also the rubber that goes on the other side of that. So the first thing you need to do is put the handbrake bracket back in, and you will actually need to grease the this end of the bracket to actually get it through the rubber, if it's a new rubber anyway. I found the easiest way to fit this is to actually put this spring on before you actually locate the first shoe in this side and then the second shoe in this side. Then when it comes to it, the spring is already in that back position. What we're now going to do is actually fit the spring, the other spring, across these two holes. But first of all we're going to release it from the adjuster, release one side from the adjuster, leave the other side still in, use the spring, and then use the shoe to actually be the leverage that you'll need to actually get it in. So with the top spring already hooked in, all you need to do is use the shoe as a lever, and you can fit the top one in like that. Right, to ensure nothing moves now, we need to get both the clips in that actually hold these shoes in place. Right, with the two spring clips holding the shoes in place, the last thing is to actually put the spring that goes across the handbrake. Now that's finally in place, we can now put the hub back on again. What we'll do is we'll put a bit of grease on the splines just to make sure that they don't rust. So that's the hub back on again, and make sure you always fit new split pins to both handbrake and the centre spindle.